Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of The Meeting Replay, a series where I break down how modern financial advisors are actually using AI inside real client or prospect conversations. This isn't theory or best practices. This is a real meeting with real workflows and what's actually happening inside with the help of AI. I'm your host, Diana Cabrices, Chief Evangelist at Jump, the #1 AI platform for financial professionals. And today I am joined by Don Morgan of Colmina Wealth to unpack a client planning meeting with a younger mother navigating several children, a foster child, a new career, and a sudden windfall. So we're going to unpack this conversation together. We'll talk about what stood out during the meeting, how Don navigated things, but also how he used AI for better meeting outcomes and for better meeting incomes going into that meeting. Don, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to dive into how you turned this complex family dynamic meeting into an AI-generated family tree. That's the focus of our episode today. So welcome to the show.
Well, I'm really honored to be here. I've been using Jump since it first became available on the LPL platform almost 3 years ago now. And I was actually privileged to be part of the evaluation team that decided Jump was the right choice for us. And so it's a real pleasure for me to be here. And I've been using it ever since. It keeps getting better and better. And now it's become an integral part of how we do our business. When I joined the RIA that I'm now a part owner of, we brought Jump in, and the other teammates are just in awe. Their notes are pristine. They don't forget things. And now we're going into deeper training on how to use it, especially in that interface between moving someone from prospect to client. And we have a very structured methodology for how we do business. And in that structure, the meeting that I'm going to talk about is a discovery meeting where we go through a fact finder that is specifically designed to ask both hard questions and soft questions. So hard questions like, where do you live? What's your date of birth? And soft questions like, you don't have any life insurance. How do you feel about that? You don't have any savings. How do you feel about that? Well, in this case, there was a windfall of almost $1 million. And it's in the midst of a number of tragedies that are going on. Life is tough. And for a young mother with children ranging from 6 months of age to 12 years old, it's a little overwhelming. Plus, jumping from a job making this much money to a job making this much money. So lots of bad things, lots of good things going on. And part of what we do is train our agents and our advisors how to use notes to make sure that we're able to get quality introductions to people from that first meeting that the prospect to client is ready to introduce us to, because they're so impressed with the way we ask the questions and what we ask. So it's a very, like I said in the beginning, a structured process. Well, in this case, part of that process is what we call the family tree, where we want to know who your mom and dad are, who your siblings are, your aunts and uncles, sometimes even nieces and nephews. And the whole reason for that is to find out what the family dynamics are. And in this case, there's some very interesting family dynamics. But when we got done with this hour and 10-minute meeting, I was able to ask Jump, and there's a feature in Jump where you can ask anything.
Yes. Love it.
Well, and that was not part of the original Jump. It was one of the many improvements that have come along, and it's a game changer, because I said, give me the family tree, and it gave me the family tree. And there were like a dozen people that we talked about. And that enabled us to really drill down and say, who in this family tree would be a good introduction for us? And the other question, which is critical in the planning process, especially for someone who's gone from this much income to this much income, and from this much net worth to this much net worth, she's got to decide, who's going to be the guardian for her children should she die? Who's going to be the custodian and guardian of the money? And that's where the family comes in. And we're zeroing in on who would be the custodian of the money is probably a private trust company of some form. But the guardian of the children has to be a human being. And by knowing that there's money set aside so that that human being doesn't have the additional financial burden of, oh, joy, 4 new kids. By the way, when that happens to you, it's not like you've had 9 months to prepare. There's been a tragic death, and now you've just had 4 children from a few months old to 12 appear on your doorstep. This is a life-changing event.
I mean, I can't even imagine, right? Like if that would happen to me. And what I'm hearing is like this wasn't just a conversation about who is going to control the money. It's how is this family going to be protected if something were to happen to her? She suddenly has all of this responsibility on her plate, on her shoulders. And now it's okay, we need to start talking more deeply. Like what will happen if something would happen to you? How did you feel that shift in the meeting? Like, did you know it going in because of your prospect to client process that you've set up that's enabled by AI? Is it something you felt in the meeting as you started to learn more? Is it post meeting when you looked at that family tree that Jump helped you generate?
Those are great questions. And another feature that Jump has, which we're using more and more, is help prepare for a meeting as a feature. And because this was our second meeting, first one for me, but our second meeting, I was able to give it the details from the prior meeting, and it suggested some courses of questions. But truly in the meeting, we don't know. And so we have to ask you, who in your family would you trust? And there was this person, oh no, that person, oh, absolutely. So, and you read body language and you read the verbal cues. And Jump also has a verbal cue section where you can look and see during that meeting, was there sadness, anger, happiness, concern? So there's an emotional index built into the Jump software. It's not 100% perfect, but it's pretty darn good.
I that's one of my favorite features as well, and it's one we talk about often. Is this entire insights dashboard that is doing 2 things. It's identifying those areas where client sentiment might have dipped or maybe went up in a meeting, so that you can understand and attach that to what were we talking about in those moments? What did I say to lift client sentiment? But also as an advisor, the emotional quotient, right? The emotional intelligence of advisors is so important. That awareness is what that gives you.
Well, and that EQ, or emotional intelligence quotient, is fundamental to being a good advisor, but you have to have feedback to understand it.
Yeah.
The next step for us is we gather together as a team, including a lot of senior advisors, and in this case, the younger advisor who brought the case in.
Okay.
And this morning we did what we call case design, where we look at the facts and the feelings that we developed and say what's appropriate, and being able to ask anything and say, what was the discussion about savings? We have a very specific savings discussion that we use. So we know what's appropriate to put where in the forward-looking cash flow, because cash flow is everything when it comes to financial planning.
Yep.
And the challenge is, when you're doing this with a yellow pad and number 2 pencil, which is how I started out, you're going to capture a lot of data, but you're going to miss a lot of data. It comes in what's now called an unstructured process. What Jump does is it creates structure around that process for me. The other thing is we really care about the people we work for, and that's part of what we're demonstrating by the questions we ask. We also make commitments. We're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to do the other thing. Well, if I don't write those on the yellow pad, I may forget to live up to that commitment. And Jump, as a note taker, has gotten better and better at making sure I don't make that mistake. Now, it's designed on purpose so that it never becomes a permanent part of my books and records until I've reviewed it. And then I push buttons that say, yes, I want that to go into my notes. Or I can push another button and say, no, you've got some names wrong in there and some facts wrong in there. because sometimes it does make mistakes.
Sure.
And then it fixes that. And then I put those notes into my CRM. I press another button and it's been trained on my voice and my way of thinking.
Yep.
And it generates a summary email. And again, I review that. I make sure it's exactly what I want. I add a little bit here and I take a little bit out there. And then I send it to the client and I get rave reviews from clients. Because remember, especially in this case, we're dealing with someone who's never dealt with finance in her entire life. And now with a baby in her arms, she's got this weight of $1 million on her shoulders. And there's all sorts of crises going on and things happening in addition. And she's being very adult, very responsible, but it's still overwhelming.
Absolutely. You know, this process you're describing, right? Of, okay, I got my notes. I'm going to just give it a quick glance to make sure I'm happy before it's recorded, to the email, which again, I'll take a look at to make sure I like what it's saying, everything's structured the way I want it. We call this like the human in the loop, right? So you're empowered by AI. AI is doing a lot of the work, whether that's, some advisors just use it for a note taker. Some advisors have built out truly agentic AI workflows, which is the way that Jump has headed and is now building and delivering for advisors. But we always think it's important to have the human in the loop, right? And this is such a relationship business, but I love how you mentioned like your clients are just so, I can't remember the word you used, but I'll just use enamored with these emails, right? It's exactly what they've wanted, I think, for so long in this area of their life is structure. And that is literally what AI is giving. As you mentioned, it's giving structure. Clients have craved structure. Your financial, conversations they're usually a little bit all over the place. There's emotions swirled in. And so when you have something to create that structure, it is a game changer. It truly is.
Well, and not that I want to throw my industry under the bus, but most advisors live in a very unstructured environment.
Yes, that's so true.
And we've needed this. When I first got into this side of finance in the early 90s, I remember one of my trainers said, because I asked, how do we keep our notes? And he says, well, people don't generally want to keep their notes. And I'm like, really? He says, yeah, you if you get sued, they're going to want a discovery. And I'm like, that's why I want notes.
Right.
And I was just mortified that the industry as a whole just didn't even keep them at the time. Now, that may not be true for every advisor. I'm sure there were many that did, but we've come a long way since then. And this is now seen as best practice.
Absolutely.
And the words you use, that man in the middle and the man in charge, those are now being used by regulators.
Yep.
Because AI is something relatively new under the sun. But the good news is, because another feature of Jump that I really respect is when we start a meeting, we always start by introducing the note taker. Whether it's in an in-person meeting face-to-face, which is now only about 1 in 10 or 1 in 20 of my meetings. And when I do have a face-to-face meeting, it can be in a restaurant, it can be on a park bench, it can be in my office, and I use my mobile phone, and I always introduce it as my note taker.
Got it right here.
And on Zoom, it pops in and I say here, or Teams, it's my note taker, and we talk about it. And I get permission for that note taker to be there. What I've found is clients appreciate that. They want an advisor who understands how to use technology, but who doesn't load them with jargon.
I mean, it's your assistant, right? And so, hey, I've brought someone in, and whether it's AI or a real human, but someone else is here right now to make sure I don't miss anything. It's all in positioning, right? And I think clients, based on all the conversations I have with advisors about their use of AI, I think a lot of advisors at this point are like, clients are okay with it. Clients are kind of expecting it now. I can't use it. I could run a meeting without it, but I'm so used to it now that it's so integrated in my workflows. I don't want to run meetings without my note taker anymore, right? So you got to position it in a way that makes sense to your clients. And I think at this point, as I said, they're all expecting it. Go ahead, Don.
I was going to say, before Jump, I used a audio note taker that I would dictate my notes to after a meeting. And then it would upload it for my registered assistant to review. and then copy and paste it into my CRM and copy and paste it into an email to me for me to rewrite as an email to my client. And I can't give you an exact number, but it's been an enormous value saver for us. We've saved significant time, paid staff time that's now being able to be deployed where it should be in better customer service and better research and even marketing efforts.
Absolutely, to grow. And that's the thing. It's like, you can use AI in so many cool ways, but the indirect benefits of this AI platform are so vast and there's so much going on that people don't even think about. So I love that you share that. I think I've got one more question for you and then we'll wrap it up. There are, as I mentioned, still some advisors out there who maybe they're just using Jump or other tools as just a note taker. Maybe they're not using it at all yet. Maybe they're still trying to figure it out. They're trying to get their footing. What advice would you give them about where the real value starts to show up for them?
Well, it's a great question. And part of it may even be fear of AI.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love about Jump is that it is being used by some of the largest firms in our business, and they're able to do that because of the extreme care Jump has done to be extraordinarily compliant with the rules and regulations. And so that if you're afraid of AI because it might get you regulatory scrutiny, I'd say it's the opposite. Having Jump on your side, I think it makes you better at what you do. The other thing I'd say is from a practice protection perspective, if I can be alliterative, if you're not using Jump, the people who are going to be able to compete with you better. And so you ought to learn how to use it well. We haven't even touched on a dozen things that it does other than what we've talked about. But I'm with you, Diane. I cannot imagine trying to run my practice without Jump or something similar in my corner.
And you shouldn't have to, right? Times have changed. So I think that's the best point to end on. Dawn, thank you so much for all the time and just sharing your story. I know this will be helpful to other advisors. We have a lot of advisors that tune into the show. Undoubtedly, they're going to walk away and say, I'm inspired by Dawn. Maybe they'll even reach out to you. I don't know. But I want to go and I want to do more with AI. So we are so grateful for your time today.
Truly my pleasure. And if anyone does want to reach out to me, feel free to look me up on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to chat about Jump, AI in general, or whatever you'd like to talk about.
Wonderful. Well, if any of you are still in our audience today and you're interested in learning more about Jump, the #1 AI platform built for financial advisors, financial professionals, designed to save you a lot of time, as Dawn mentioned today, increase your revenue, and elevate your client experience, all with compliant AI, feel free to scan this QR code down at the bottom of the screen. This is a 14-day free trial of the Jump platform. So no commitment is required. If you just want to test it out, have it sit in your next client or prospect meeting. Come back and let me know what you thought about that if you do. Thank you also so much for being here. We will see you on the next episode.